Hey everybody, this is Freddie with LeviathanScuba.com. You know, there's basically only two different styles of BCDs out there. So if you're hunting for a new BC, let me help clarify what's the difference. We'll get to that in just a minute.
We have had one heck of a week here at Demon.
You know, a lot of people out there hunting for BCDs have never even heard of a back inflate BC. What the heck is a back inflate? Well, we'll get to that. You know, there have been this typical style BC that you're used to, the jacket style, right? Everybody knows what that is because pretty much that's what you used when you learned to get certified to scuba dive, right? The jacket style. But there's a new BCD, the back inflate, where the bladder is behind you. There's a few more differences than that. We'll cover them here in just a second. But those are the two that are out there. The jacket style has been around since the BCD was created. A few improvements here and there, adding integrated weight pockets and things like that. But the newest one on the marketplace really kind of came to us through the tech world. The tech divers, they needed something to accomplish a purpose, right? They have spare bottles. They need extra regulators. They needed their chest and the front of their body free and clear to be able to hook some of those things to get to them quickly and easily. And they had a BCD with the bladder when it was completely in the back. Well, recreational divers have caught on to the benefits of a back inflate BC. But if you've never even seen one before, then might be a little foreign to you. So we'll cover the differences here in just a second. So kind of covering the overview, the jacket style itself, right? You put it on like a vest. It has inflation all the way around your sides, on your waist, as well as behind you, okay? You have your side pockets on the side. There's inflation, or the bladder is underneath them. It's connected to the bladder behind you. It's one big giant bladder all the way around your body, and that's your typical jacket style. And then you can have some pockets and D-rings and things like that. The back inflate BC, that just has the bladder behind you. So you can see in the front of there, it's a little bit more minimal, right? You don't have near as much material or vest or equipment necessarily, okay? And the bladder is completely behind the diver. I want to say that the manufacturers now are making a recreational version, so it's not necessarily for tech divers only anymore. They've incorporated all the parts and pieces that you want in a BCD, but they've made it in a little bit easier to handle package, okay? So the bladder being behind you, you never get any squeeze at all. Okay, so if you inflated it all the way full, you can't even feel it back there, okay? One of the things about diving a back inflate BC is, because the bladder's behind you, it's much easier to hold a horizontal position. If there is any air in your BC, then the air is behind you and it's in the back. Whereas the jacket style, you have such a large bladder all the way around, kind of depends. If you roll or you move, the air might shift to the inflation on your left side. Then you have to kind of force it around and get it behind you again. And then if you roll to your right, then it's going to be in your right-hand side. The answer to that really is don't put any air in your BC. Why do you need air in your BC? If you want to lift something, maybe I get it. But normally, divers should have little to no air in their BC. So if you inhale, you rise. You exhale, you sink. That's the proper buoyancy method underwater. Okay? I want to say that there's many similarities. It's not going to be so different for you if you're thinking about a back inflate that you're not going to know how to use it. For example, they both inflate and deflate exactly the same way. They probably use the same exact inflator, deflator, hose, unit, and everything. They have the dump valves. They all have them top and bottom. You can have your padded straps if you want to. They hold your tank the same way. And your weights can be the same. There are some differences. So holding your tank, let's talk about it. Some of your back inflate, or sometimes they call it a travel BC because it can fold up so small. Some of them accomplish reducing the weight by getting rid of the tank backpack, the hard part, the cradle. Okay? They get rid of it altogether and they leave it kind of soft, flexible material. Personally, I don't like those myself. Some people might just love them because they fold up really in a nice, tight little package, fit in your luggage, and they don't weigh very much. Okay, that's good. Then there are those that have a small cradle. It's hard cradle. Your tank gets strapped in there very positive, and it's very small. So you can still fold it up small, and it doesn't weigh very much, but at least your tank doesn't flop around back there on your back. So that's typically a difference. They also, you can attach accessories to them virtually the same exact way. Even travel BCs or back inflate BCs still have D-rings up on the straps. They have them on the sides. They may have them on the belt in the front. But a number of other things have been reduced. For example, many of the travel BCs don't even have a cummerbund. Why do you need a cinch strap and a cummerbund at the same time? Well, if your BC is bulky and or has a lot of lift, you want it to be snug to your body. But if you just have your straps tight and your waist strap tight and your back inflate doesn't pull on you, then you don't need all of that. So it actually even helps make it a little bit lighter. They're both, for the most part, made out of the same material. Sometimes the back inflate BCs have been made a little bit lighter for travel purposes, and you're not going to use this like a tech BC, or an instructor might not use this one because he doesn't need to carry all the extra stuff for the students, like extra weights. Jacket style might be better for that if you're going to take weight on, or bring a lot of weight with you so you can hand it out underwater if people are light, or carry all your slates or things like that. That would be more a bigger bladder, a bigger BC, and that's the jacket style. I want to say, when I say toughness, they're made out of the same material. Occasionally, the travel BCs are a little bit lighter, denier nylon. But I want to say, in our service department, we don't see BCDs wear out from abuse. We don't see them wear out from physical damage usually. It's hard to wear out a BCD. What we usually see that kills the BC is somebody that neglected it. They didn't clean it properly. The salt water was left on the inside, or it wasn't rinsed a second or a third time to get all the salt out, and then it was stored that way. Or maybe even chlorine from a swimming pool, that kind of a thing. That's usually what kills most BCs. So how about a secondary air source? You know how some people get rid of their octo on a hose and they put it on their BC hose. No difference. Both of them do the exact same thing. I have a secondary air source on mine, and I dive a back inflate. Okay? The weight of the actual BC for travel can be different. The average jacket style weighs from about 8 to 10 pounds. That's not to say there aren't some out there that are trying to be made lighter. Every manufacturer wants to give you the best BCD possible, but our needs are different. So you need to buy the BCD for your needs, and that comes down to not all BCs are created equal. So whereas one weighs 10 pounds, there's a reason. Whereas one weighs just under 5 pounds, there's a reason. You have to determine with your style of diving what works best for you. Okay? When you travel with them, the heavier BCs obviously are going to be a little more difficult to pack. The lighter BCs are going to be a little easier to pack. You may lose some of your features or the components on the BC itself. Okay? So next you have when you travel, how do you carry your current BC? I have renters that rent equipment because they don't want to travel with it necessarily, or when they get to their destination, they'll rent the BCD there because they think just packing it is very complicated and bulky and heavy and all of that. Most divers that do a lot of diving, they bring their own gear. So it is one of the advantages if you can have a BC that folds up to something like this that weighs about, 4.5 to 5 pounds. There's an advantage to that to your traveling and your luggage. Okay? When you actually wear the BCs and you're diving, first of all, I want to say again, try to have as little air in your BCD as possible, and you're going to minimize some of the drawbacks to the jacket style. But typically people do dive with a little bit of air in their BC to make themselves completely neutral. Well, that jacket style has that big bubble in the back, and when you turn, it can go all the way up to your belly. It can go up to the side inflation because it's all one big bladder. And then when you turn, it goes all the way over to the other side. So you can see it almost makes you want to kind of float upright if it's on this side. Again, minimizing that air is going to help that, but that happens. Back inflates, the bubble just kind of stays behind you. So even if you turn, it's still behind you. It might be at the upper end at that point or the lower, so not to say you couldn't feel it at all, but it's very minimal. So they tend to want to hold you horizontal, which is the way you want to dive anyway, right? Now, here is a big difference, although some of the manufacturers, as I'm making this video, are coming out with products that make them much more similar. But holding your weights, your lead weight on your body. Okay, bigger bladder. You need weight pockets. You've seen those before, the integrated weight pockets. They can be pretty darn different between them, okay? Some of them don't even have weight pockets at all. Right? So like this right here is what I would call a weight pouch. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so you know what weight pockets are when you pull the weights out, and you can drop them if you need to. That's that weight pocket. If you lose one of those, they range from about $28 to $45 for one. That's kind of expensive if you lose one of those. What if it didn't have it at all? One of my favorite features of some of the modern BCDs are no weight pockets. You know, when we have a student that's diving with us in a lake and they've rented the gear and they come back and they don't have a weight pocket, I hate looking them in the eye and saying, hey, I'm sorry, but I got to charge you for that. We'll find it. Hopefully, we'll give you your money back. But, you know, well, take a look at this here. This is on the Sherwood. And it literally has a pouch. Your lead fits down inside of there. So you just put your lead down inside like so, and you zip it in. And then if you ever need to dump your weights, which frankly, we don't dump our weights very often, right, these days, you just pop that clip, and the weight falls out the bottom. Same thing on the BioLite, which is one of my favorite BCs. You can check out the review. It has the pouch that you just open it up, drop it, and the lead falls right out. No weight pocket to lose. Very simple, very lightweight, not an extra piece of gear to store. Pack in your luggage, all that kind of thing, okay? So, now, this next part is a little tricky to explain, but I have to explain it because it is, it's the most common thing you'll see on a blog, especially from old timers. Now, I'm an old timer. I've been diving 50 years. So I might have been one of the guys that said this at one point, but you know, people hate change. What I'm talking about is this. If you go out and you start looking at back inflate BCDs, checking out the blogs and the channels and all those kind of things where people are talking about it, even some other reviewers that I've seen when they review the gear, this is what they say. They say, well, gee, if you're on the surface and you fill your BC all the way full and you're unconscious, the back inflate will pitch you forward and you'll drown. I'll even say that's true, but that never happens, ever. Why? Because nobody fills their BCD up all the way full to where it's tight or whatever. You just don't do it. So if you fall forward unconscious, I don't care which BCD you're wearing, you're going to die. But they're saying the jacket style, if it's full all the way, it'll hold you up like a cork with your head out of the water. Okay, that's a valid thing to bring up, but it almost seems like they're copying each other. Nobody has actually thought this out and done it in a real world scenario. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, okay? So this is a back inflate, and this one here is a jacket style. I'm going to ask you a question. If we were diving and we were sitting on the surface, waiting for the boat, having a conversation, how full is your BC? It's not that full, right? You have just enough air to keep your head out of the water, right? That's exactly what we do. We don't inflate it all the way full. It doesn't matter which kind of BCD you have, you just don't do that. You have just enough air to keep your head out of the water for the most part. So I'm going to show you something, and you tell me if this is right or wrong. I don't think this is opinion, I think this is physics, right? If your back inflate BC had about 1/3 of the air in it, where's it going to be? If you're on the surface and you're vertical, it's going to be at the top of the BC behind you. Let's look at a jacket style BCD. Same exact scenario. You're on the surface, you're vertical, waiting for the boat, and you have 1/3 of the BC full of air, just enough to keep your head out. Where is the air going to be? Behind you at the top. You can't tell me the air is going to be down here in the side parts if you only have it 1/3, because all the air goes to the top. Right? So they're identical in that scenario. So in a real world scenario, scuba diving, you are going to have the same feeling from both BCDs. Now, the manufacturers have actually reacted to the comments from people that say, gee, if it's full, it's going to pitch you forward and drown, right? And that's if you're unconscious. Rather than saying, hey, they're the same in a real world scenario, this is what they did. They put weight pouches on the backs of the BCs, either very low or usually at the tank level, so you can put weight back there. So now you have 1/3 of the air, you have weight behind you, it helps balance you out. You can actually just kind of sit there, bend your knees, you tilt back, tilt your head back, whatever, just relax. You can almost take a nap back there. And the weight is behind you. You can control how much weight is behind you, so you can control how balanced you are in the water when you're vertical. But I'm going to go back and say, underwater, we spend more of our time horizontal scuba diving than we do vertical, hopefully, right? If you have your weight figured out right. So that's the way we're going to dive. That's the way we spend more time. The jacket style tends to kind of rise you up forward a little bit, and then the back inflate tends to hold you more horizontal. Well, which would you prefer? Okay? So I will talk a little bit about the trainers, for example, like teachers, instructors underwater. Most of my instructors, they have both. Why do they have both? Because when they're in the pool or they're in an open water scenario and they're carrying extra weight for the student, or they have all the stuff on their body, their slates, they're marking the roster off, you to accomplish this task, you did that. You know, they need something like that. Plus, in Colorado, one of the benefits to a jacket style BC having a bigger bladder is you can carry more lead weight. On your favorite trip into the Caribbean, nice warm water, what do you want a lot of weight for? You don't. You're going to use the thinnest wetsuit you can, 3 mil, something like that. No wetsuit, a shorty, whatever. Very little weight. You don't need 64 pounds of lift. Okay? Like the BioLite, for example, is a back inflate. It only has 29 pounds of lift, and I think that's probably about, 15 pounds too much. You don't need that. Okay? The recreational diver wants to be less encumbered. You don't want stuff hanging all over you. You're not going to have extra regs with 8-foot hoses to hand off to a student attached here. You might have your octo if you don't have it over here, but less in front is still better. You're not going to have tools or emergency gear, right? So recreational diving, perfect with a back inflate. Very comfortable. Now this is what you call a wing. It's got a back plate, a harness, and a wing. That is one of the original back inflate BCDs that tech divers came up with, and that's what they started using. I'm going to compare that in another video because that's back inflate against back inflate. Something with a little bit more technical need versus recreational need. We'll cover that in a different video. But they do dive differently, okay? So let's get on to the pros. The back inflate is lighter. It's more streamlined. That equals less drag. That equals less energy, right, expended. That equals less exhaustion, more dive time, better air consumption. That's a pro for the back inflate BCD. Now, this may sound similar, but better trim. The trim is what holds you horizontal in the water. So the back inflate, because it doesn't have inflation on the sides, it's not near as large of a bladder, you can trim the BCD out better. You have the back inflate right behind you, and then you have weight pockets in the back and in the front. Depending on how you balance those, you can keep yourself trimmed out very simply in the water, and it's easier to hold a more horizontal position. They are less bulky. and they are more compact, better to pack into your luggage. They are more comfortable. I'm going to say that the word freedom is often the word used when I try one on in the showroom with a customer with the jacket style and the sides and all that. And I love to inflate them in the showroom because people go, oh, I don't like that. And then when they wear the back inflate, I even inflate it and they go, oh, I can't even feel it. So you feel very free. It doesn't feel like you're wearing very much. There's never a squeeze. You never get yourself squeezed in there and it feels too tight because the bladder's behind you. And there's no opportunity for it to squeeze, okay? A lot less material. They don't have a cummerbund, for example. They don't have weight pouches, for example. A lot of them don't have pockets. Now, that might be a negative, but you can always add a pocket to the belt. I've grown accustomed to hanging my knife and my camera and things like that from my D-rings, and there's D-rings all over them, so that's okay. Thinner straps. They do have integrated weights, but without the pouch, so that's a benefit. Okay? Little to nothing on your side. That's probably the first thing putting one on in the showroom you're going to notice. With your hands down to the side, your arms don't hit anything, right? When you see the side pouches and whether they're inflated or not in the pockets, you kind of have to hold your arms up front or something. You can't just let them go down to your side. So your arms are a more natural, easier position. Fitting the BC. If you could imagine having to fit this side attached to that side, it's all one piece of material, to the body, versus not having any of that, just straps and a single strap. Which do you think would be a little easier to fit? It's the one with the straps only. So it fits a wider variety. So I love it when parents look at a back inflate for their younger divers because your medium is going to carry you long into your large, maybe even closer to your extra large because you can just adjust the straps and everything. And the inflation stays the same behind you. You don't need, because you're an older person, a more mature diver, you don't need more air in your BCD. Actually, you'll get away with less because you'll be a more mature diver. So the pros for the jacket style really are, you're comfortable with it already, right? It's the most common style around the world. So you probably trained using a jacket style BCD, so you're already used to it, right? Because everywhere you go around the world, that's pretty much what they have. So if you're going to rent one, being used to a jacket style is the norm. You go down to Mexico, the Caribbean, wherever, very few places rent you back inflates. Now you're starting to see it on your higher end luxury resorts, your liveaboards. They're doing wings, they're doing back inflates, and people are coming away going, wow, I got to get me one of those. I love diving that, okay? Excuse me. So if you're going to rent around the world, chances are you're going to find a jacket style. Right? They do have more lift capacity because they have a larger bladder. They're going to lift more. So if you're going to be hauling up gold bricks from the bottom of the ocean, you need a jacket style, right? I tease, but in reality, if you're going to have more lead, because like I mentioned, an instructor or something, they have more space to carry stuff too. So big pockets on the sides usually, because you already have the material there. They add another pocket with a zipper and that sort of thing, okay? So better choice for cold water is a jacket style, and why would the temperature of the water make any difference? Because you have more lift, you are gonna, in colder water, you're gonna have a thicker suit or a dry suit, and you're gonna have more lead. So you're gonna have more weight. You need more weight in cold water than you do in warm water. And that's simply because of the thickness of your suit, the buoyancy that the suit makes, the dry suit, things like that. So typically a cold water BC is going to be a jacket style. More lift, carries more lead, okay? The negatives, okay? This is something that is a little tricky to explain. If we were in a showroom together, I'd love to show you this. So a jacket style, because you have the material goes around your back and it comes down along the side, it creates a giant scoop, right? When you're going through the water horizontal and you're kicking, you're propelling the motion, this works like a scoop on the side of your body. It's grabbing water in here. Okay? You're going this way and the scoops are hanging out to the side and you're scooping water into the sides. Well, guess what? That takes energy. That takes your effort. It takes air out of your tank. You can't last as long, more air consumption, that sort of thing. Let me show the same thing on the BioLite, for example. This actually has a bungee system that sucks the bladder in the back, so it's very minimal. But there's no scoops that grab water. This is part of the harness in the back. It's tied up against your skin, and this is when it's not on a mannequin. If that was a full-size person, those pockets are kind of back here. They're back on the side, right? So you can reach them easy enough to dump them, but they're back here. They're not in front of you. They're not scooping water, grabbing. And the bladder just simply goes right through the water very simply. Having the bungee that sucks it in tighter even makes it more minimal behind you so it doesn't grab. If you were wearing this and you looked in the mirror, you can't even see it. It's behind your body completely. So it's not like a lot of these jacket styles where you can see the wing or the bladder coming out to the side and then the shoulders, and that's where. And this one's actually minimum. This is a Sherwood, and it's actually very minimal. You have a lot of them that come all the way out here. And I think the manufacturers are catching on that with you propelling that BC with two big scoops on the side, grabbing a lot of water, that you're using a lot of air. Okay? Okay, oftentimes a negative for the jacket style is with the side bladders on there, it's substantially more restrictive. You feel the bulk of the material. Just putting one of these on in the showroom floor, you can tell the difference. I tell everybody, move your arms around, right? When you're in a back inflate, there's nothing to touch. You're not touching anything. It's just a strap behind you. Whereas the jacket styles, you're going to have, that big shoulder that comes out to that scoop I was talking about, or the bladder on the side that comes around your shoulders, and then you have the pockets and everything. So it's just less restrictive. The side bladders, they come forward and they take up space, and that can result in bulk. Okay, they are a little more difficult to fit because with all that extra material, you can imagine that a bigger person can't fit inside the containment of, let's say, a medium-sized BC. You couldn't jump from a medium to a large, for example. Okay? Because there's so much more material and more to it with the side pockets and everything, you can imagine if you were building one of those, it would cost you more in just materials alone. So typically the jacket styles are a little bit more expensive. So the negatives or the cons for a back inflate. Typically there's a little bit of a learning curve when you first wear one. Obviously, if you're used to wearing a jacket style, that's what you were trained in, that's what you're used to, they're almost all going to feel similar. But when you put the back inflate on, it's going to dive just a little bit different. Most of the divers, I think every diver I know that gets used to the back inflate likes it so much better because it's so much more minimal and comfortable and easier to get around through the water, right? There's so many advantages in my opinion, but another negative is that it's not going to be your best choice for cold water. So if you're diving cold water quite often, you're either going to want to have two BCs, one of each, or you're going to want the jacket style probably because they hold more lead. All right, I know I didn't cover every single possibility, but I hope to have demystified the back inflate BC for you and maybe even kind of clarified some of those criticisms of people that have never used them have written about them online. I love them. It's what I dive. I think most of my instructors have both for teaching in Colorado, cold for jacket, but any BC they take on their own personal vacation to just enjoy the diving, they take a back inflate. All right? Hope it's been good. Take care.
We don't get a chance to review every single product on the market like we'd like to, a full-blown review. So we do these discovery videos so that we can bring you the latest and the greatest and all the new stuff. If we've helped you in some way or if you enjoy these, if you'll hit the like button for us, that would help us. And if you hit the subscribe button, you'll know when the next one comes out. Make it a great day.